So, when you sit down and you watch the movie Lonesome Dove, right? You're probably not expecting to get a Latin lesson, right? You might expect cowboys, dust, gunfights, hookers, all this other stuff, right? Whiskey, clowns, whatever, right? And that's exactly what you get. But hanging right there in front of you is a Latin lesson and a Latin lesson in life, and it's beautiful. And at first glance, it kind of looks impressive because Latin always does. But here's the truth: it's bad Latin. I was a fan of Lonesome Dove. I was a fan before, like Dead Man Walking, Streets of Laredo, all this. I was a fan of Lonesome Dove from practically as soon as I could read, right? And more than that, I think I was a fan of Larry McMurtry. And I don't know why I was probably too young to realize that Larry McMurtry would eventually have such a huge influence on my life and his work, and his kind of liberal artistic thinking. And as I was reading one of my favorite books that he wrote was a book called Walter Benjamin at the Dairy Queen. Fascinating book, absolutely fascinating. And it all kind of ties into this. McMurtry was doing what great writers and what great thinkers do, leaving us something to think about in a way that we really don't realize that we're thinking it. McMurtry pulled that off with this Latin text being on the Hat Creek Cattle Company sign. Fascinating. Now, of course, when you sit down and you watch Lonesome Dove, you're not expecting this to be a story about Latin and life, although there's frontier philosophy, American Western philosophy drug all through this movie. You kind of expect the dust, the cowboys, the hookers, the whiskey, Robert Duvall, Augustus McCrae, making wisecracks, right, doing their thing. But hanging right there in front of you is this sign for the Hat Creek Cattle Company. And it has this curious phrase on it that says uvam, vivendo, varia. There's a wonderful line in the movie where Gus and Captain Call, Tommy Lee Jones, are having a discussion about this. And Tommy Lee Jones thinks it's, something in Greek, right? Well, Gus tells him, says, how many times I got to tell you it's not in Greek? It's Latin. Tommy Lee Jones says, well, says, for all we know, you're inviting people to come and rob us or something. And Gus comes back and says, well, you know what? If a man who can speak Latin comes up and wants to rob us, he'd be my guest. I've always wanted my whole life the chance to shoot at an educated man. It's just, and of course I paraphrase that line, but it's classic. It's classic because the way he pronounced it, he's like, uva una bavuma 1 foot down foot. He barely pronounce it, and obviously doesn't even know what it means. And I think that most people watching this wouldn't know what it means. I know I didn't know what it meant when I was a kid, and I don't think most people would, right? But it's really interesting. So if you've ever been watching this and you've seen that wooden sign there, and you've seen uvam, vivendo, varia, what does it mean, right? It's an interesting story. So here's the deal. It's supposed to be Latin. Okay? It's supposed to be Latin. And I guess it kind of is Latin, but it's not great Latin. In fact, it's kind of wrong Latin. And that's the liberal artist coming out, the liberal artist, which we can get into the whole discussion about this later, of Larry McMurtry coming out, right? But the phrase is supposed to mean something like a grape changes when it's around other grapes or something like this, or probably more naturally it would be like a grape ripens in the company of other grapes. Now what's written on the sign is vivendo, okay, which that's not the correct word, okay? And I believe, we'll get into this, I believe McMurtry did this intentionally wrong. It should be videndo, V-I-D. So it means by seeing, right? Videndo means by seeing. So instead of saying a grape ripens by living, right? It should be a grape ripens by seeing. And so one little vowel here makes the total difference, But here's where this whole story gets rather interesting. So even though the Latin gets messed up here, right? The meaning behind this and the thought behind this still hits home, right? What Gus and probably really Larry McMurtry meant. What he was trying to get at this was that we grow and we change based on who we're around. Now, it's a story as old as time. Grapes do not ripen in isolation, right? Neither do people. And I want you to think about the broad application of that throughout the modern Western society today. How we could apply that to ourselves, to criminal justice, to all sorts of things, right? We could apply this to all sorts of things. Grapes do not ripen by themselves. Simple, right? Neither do people. So if you put a grape in a cluster, then it matures, right? If you leave it on its own, it just kind of shrivels up and dies, right? It's a metaphor. It's a clean artes liberales metaphor in philosophy for a much deeper concept. And I think that's the beauty of this whole thing. And as country people, a lot of times we don't think like this. As modern Americans, we don't think very broad about these things. So it's a metaphor, and it's a really good one. In our lives, our daily lives, you, me, all of us, right? This metaphor is teaching us about the people that we keep close to us, okay? Their habits, their moods, their mindset, their energy, all of these things, right, that rub off on us, whether we want it to or not. And we ripen, right? Or we rot, depending on who's around us, depending on the company we keep. And you've heard this a million times. People judge you by the company you keep. So if you take anything away from Gus and his half-baked Latin, Larry McMurtry and his intentional hit here, I think you should take this away from it. One, choose your cluster very wisely. Be smart about it, right? Number two, don't expect to grow without other people pushing you, pulling you, annoying you, inspiring you. And I think lastly, don't take yourself too seriously, because Gus didn't. And Gus, Robert Duvall in this movie, was one of the real key cornerstones of this movie, in the book series. All throughout the Streets of Laredo, Dead Man Walking, all this stuff, there wouldn't be a story without Gus. And I don't know if there would be a moral to this story without the character Gus. So choose your cluster wisely. Don't expect to grow without other people pushing you, challenging you, annoying you, getting in your face, pissing you off, and ultimately inspiring you. And number three, don't take yourself too seriously. And I think at the end of the day, sure, at the end of the day, it's a misquoted Latin grape proverb, right? And this somehow still manages to say something pretty profound. We become who we are through each other. We become who we are through each other. And that's the purpose of what I think the purpose is of classical education, and classical knowledge, and reading widely and thinking widely and having conversations with folks like you. So anyhow, this is just something that, again, like everything on this channel, is something that interests me, and I hope it interests you too. And I hope that we can have more conversations like this together and make things go further. So I'm Matt. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share. I would really appreciate it. It doesn't take much. I'm going to thank you in advance for doing that, because I know you will. Be sure to do that. I really appreciate it. We'll see you in the next video. And in the meantime, remember, grapes ripen with other grapes. Remember that. We'll see you.